and this is my personal responsibility and leadership competence video. So I'll be going over the organizations that I'm in, how I form relationships, how I manage conflict, and then some of the areas that I feel I need growth in and have grown in as a leader. I don't belong to a ton of civilian professional organizations. One of the ones that I belong to that I do hold near and dear to my heart is the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians. It is a nonprofit. It's founded in 1970. They are also accredited by the National Commission for Certifying Agencies. Their whole guise is to give national standards for EMS practices. I hold it near and dear to my heart because it shows that I have a high degree of skill set that is acceptable in any state. So no matter what location that I move to, instead of conforming to that state's training processes and standards, I can show my national accreditation and affiliation, and that state will then, through a formal paperwork process, and that's all it is, they will certify and credential me within that state to practice in EMS. They also give really great news articles, updated guidelines, plus certification, obviously testing. It's a great organization. Anybody in EMS, I do strongly encourage them to gain affiliation and stay with it. One more that I do belong to, the Mighty Hawkeye Battalion Alumni Association. It is an alumni association with the board of directors specifically geared towards newly up and coming cadets in Army ROTC, just giving back to them. We'll do things like start fundraisers, and with assistance through the universities in the state of Iowa, we'll set up events with volunteers where we may go out on Veterans Weekend with volunteers and we'll lay wreaths on the headstones of some of the fallen veterans in past wars and conflicts just to give back. And we'll do that alongside cadets. We may help with paying for some of their food and catering and photography for their military balls. It's just a really good way to give back, and that's why I belong to those two organizations. In terms of how I form networks and relationships with my peers, I'm not a social butterfly. I don't go around introducing myself at random to people. I typically find it a bit ineffective way to have people remember you. Normally, I form my relationships because I have business with that person or a group of people. Maybe I have to go and ask a provider, are you credentialed to do OSHA physicals for our organization? Or I have to go to a medical logistics chain and see, are they able to ship us a set of anthrax vaccines? And whenever I try and form those relationships, I'm asking them for a service, obviously, for their time, but I won't make it a one-way street. I'll always counter with offering them a service or piece of training in return for their time and helping us out. That way, they have a means of remembering us. It becomes a two-way street. It's not just me begging for help and them walking away and they have nothing in return. I feel like people are a lot more apt to remember you when you offer yourself as an asset to them versus just asking for favors. Kind of like that one bad family member we all have. In terms of informal relationships, whether it's people that I work with or I haven't worked with in a long time or a good friend, usually it's because we've worked together in the past or we've been at an event at the same time or maybe we've been out of touch for a while. I'll usually just try and reach out and see if there's a way that I can help them out or just see how they're doing, and if there's a way that I can see how their career is progressing, and if I can offer any help in any way, career opportunities, maybe a financial gain or a partnership, just something, just try and maintain some of those bonds that we've had in the past. If it's something at work, an informal relationship, maybe I'll see if I can bring someone in who has an interest in another department just to see, hey, do you have any interest in helping out in another way? Just as another way to form relationships. Like I said, I'm not a very strong social butterfly, so usually it'll be through my work in ways of how I'll start a lot of my relationships. In terms of managing conflict, oh boy, the Army is full of it. A lot of type A's, some type B as well, but you'll see a lot of butting heads just naturally through how we do business. One thing I've learned is that a lot of times you will not solve conflict while the fire is raging. When people are acting on emotion, they're not thinking logically. And, just the opposite. When they're thinking logically, they're not acting on emotion. So when two people are butting heads, something gets said in a meeting or someone reacts to something that was done that they feel was targeted towards them. A lot of times just because you have a louder authoritative voice, that doesn't mean that the conflict is going to be squashed at that moment. A lot of times what I find most effective is I'll give the situation an opportunity to play out See if those two individuals will, come to an understanding. If they don't, once they've separated and calmed down, I'll approach each individual separately behind closed doors, and I may offer, hey, this is what that other person was thinking or going through, and this is what they may have misunderstood, and that might be why they reacted how they did. And a lot of times I've had that be a very successful way to squash conflict between two individuals. um, Not always. A lot of times, as a third party, you won't always be able to resolve conflict. A lot of times, the best way is if those two individuals can come to an understanding themselves. But I have found this to be quite effective. If there's conflict between me and another individual, I do try and do the same thing where I will not get involved in fanning the flames. I will let them get out all that they need to me behind closed doors. And then once that situation is calmed down, I'll approach them again behind closed doors. Hey, you know, I understand what was said. Or what can I do to try and make things better? Or what do you think was misunderstood? Or what can I do to make you feel, more productive or at ease in the work environment? Sometimes it just takes that heart to heart just for people to try and, be, settle the conflict. But if sometimes it can't be resolved and you just need to separate both parties. In terms of some of the areas that I feel I've developed the most and that I still need growth in, for me, it would be using vision, operational planning, and then risk mitigation. I find that when you give people direction but without the why, they have a hard time with being motivated. So I've made that one of my strong suits, is providing people the why or the vision or how what they're doing plays a role in the larger growth of the organization. So once they realize the impact that their decision makes on everybody else, they're more apt to do a good job with that task. And the same thing with operational planning. When I help things run more smooth with the day to day, people are a lot more excited and thrilled to come to work because they know that they're not going through a slog of a process that could be so much faster, but it's been going so slow, or they know that their boss is doing everything they can to make things run more smooth. I found in my experience that made people a lot more happy to come to work. And the same thing with risk mitigation. Work, you've got to know when and how to accept risk, know how to measure it as well. We all have to do risky things every time we get up and go to work, and everything we do at work has some risk associated with it, but you've got to understand when it's too much. And then some of the areas that I know I need to grow on is strategic planning. I need to get a lot better at thinking decades down the road. How will my actions right now impact those that will follow in my footsteps? So this has been my personal responsibilities and leadership competence video.